Okay, let's unpack this. China's transformation, I mean, the sheer speed of it over the last few decades. It's like watching a time-lapse film, isn't it?
It really is astonishing.
And right at the center, you have Deng Xiaoping. Think about it trying to weave market economics into a socialist framework. It sounds, well, paradoxical.
Yeah, like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, you might think. What's so fascinating, though, isn't just the scale of the change, but how, well, unexpected it all was.
Right.
To go from, a predominantly agrarian society to this global economic powerhouse in, relatively speaking, such a short time that took more than just effort. It required some really, really big decisions. Risky ones, probably, at the time.
Exactly. And that's what we're really getting into today. We've got this transcript from a discussion at Shanghai Jiaotong University. Really interesting stuff. It features Professor Zhang Weiwei and Associate Professor Liu Qingwang. And they've sort of zeroed in on what they see as the three absolutely pivotal choices Deng Xiaoping made. Choices that basically remade modern China.
And if you think about the bigger picture here, understanding these decisions isn't just, looking back at history. It gives us a lens, a framework for understanding where China is now.
Yeah.
And maybe where it's headed. What were the sort of underlying philosophies? What were those moments where things could have gone, well, very differently?
And that's really the mission for this deep dive, isn't it? To cut through the complexity, pull out the key insights on these three big decisions, and try to get a feel for the spirit behind it all, the reform and opening up.
Yeah, not a dry history lesson.
Definitely not. More about understanding those key shifts.
So the question is, what were these moments? What made them so decisive? Let's start with the first one they identified. The big decision in 1978, reform and opening up.
Okay, 1978. Let's set the scene a bit. So the first 30 years of the PRC, they'd achieved quite a lot, right? Established a political system, built some basic industry.
Foundational stuff, yeah.
But, as Professor Zhang and Professor Liu point out, life for the average person, It was tough, really tough. Compared internationally, even with some places in Africa back then, China was facing significant economic hurdles.
And they paint a pretty stark picture, don't they? The numbers, like an average worker in Shanghai may be earning 40, 50 RMB a month.
Yeah.
And living space, what was it? Just over 4 square meters per person in Shanghai.
Wow.
That's not just a statistic. That shows the real limits of that old centrally planned system and, actually improving people's lives. And Deng saw that needed to change urgently.
They mentioned that American economist, Samuelson.
Yes. Yeah. Samuelson's observation. Pretty blunt. He basically said socialism hadn't eliminated poverty, just to spread it around equally.
A harsh take. And it's against that backdrop, that kind of economic reality, that Deng comes forward with this, really transformative vision.
What's so key here is Deng recognizing early on that this situation just wasn't working. That famous line, poverty is not socialism, that says it all, really. He understood that to make socialism work, you had to unleash the productive forces.
Yeah.
Develop them. And that led to this idea of a socialist market economy, which was, pretty radical thinking back then.
Absolutely. And the transcript, it points to some specific things that show Deng was already thinking ahead, pushing boundaries, like approving that first group of Jiaotong University professors to visit the U.S. October 78.
Yeah, the professors see that as a real turning point, opening up higher education to the world.
A big signal.
And it wasn't just about academics, was it? It was about a fundamental shift in thinking, a willingness to, learn from outside. And that wasn't just in education either.
No, definitely not. They mentioned his trip to Northeast China, September 78, pushing this idea of liberating thought, saying very clearly, socialism has to mean prosperity.
He wasn't just talking theory. He wanted real, tangible improvements for ordinary people.
And that story about the docking oil field visit, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Questioning why the computers were only used 2 hours a day.
Right. And saying, set up a 24-hour computing center. It shows he got the potential of technology even that early on.
Very forward-looking.
And then those trips he took later that year, October, November, 4 Asian countries. Japan, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore.
Yes, that tour.
Yeah.
The professors really stressed the impact of that on Deng himself and then on the Chinese public. He told the TV crews, didn't he? Focus on their modernization, focus on ordinary people's lives.
Exactly.
And seeing refrigerators in regular workers' homes in Japan, that must have been a powerful image back in China. He showed what was possible and, how far China had to go.
It sounds like a real wake-up call, a necessary one, maybe.
Seems so. And all these observations, plus Deng's own determination, that's what led to launching the reform and opening up policy, a decision that, well, we know now changed everything.
Tremendous changes. Okay, so that brings us to the second big strategic decision they highlight, Deng's response to the political turmoil in 1989.
Right. A very different kind of challenge.
Yeah.
This was a moment of, well, considerable uncertainty for China's political system, for social stability.
And Professor Zhang and Liu, they don't really downplay how serious that situation was in the spring and summer of '89. They talk about the real challenges, internal pressures, external ones too, and the potential for things to descend into, long-term instability, chaos even.
And you have to remember the context. The late 80s, massive shifts happening globally, Eastern Europe. China wasn't immune to that.
No.
So Deng's response, his firm stance at that critical moment, the professors view that as absolutely crucial. They argue it averted a much bigger crisis.
They really emphasize how decisive he was. Yeah. And apparently, when reflecting on it, Deng looked back at the party's own history.
Yeah, he talked about how a mature, stable central leadership had formed gradually over time, starting way back at the Zuni Conference.
Yeah.
And that historical view fed into his belief, his really strong conviction, that you absolutely need a stable core in the leadership. He said, didn't he, a leadership without a core is unreliable.
He did.
And later, he doubled down on that, stressing how vital a good Politburo, especially a good standing committee, is for the country's fate, for the people's well-being.
And the professors, Zhang and Liu, they connect that directly to the leadership under Xi Jinping, particularly since the 18th Party Congress. They point to recent changes in China, even mentioning the response to the pandemic as kind of validating Deng's judgment about needing that strong, unified central leadership.
It highlights a key theme in their analysis, doesn't it? This idea of continuity and core principles, but also adapting to new situations. Deng's decisions laid a foundation.
Yeah, a foundation for later leaders to build on, to face new challenges.
Okay, so that leads us to the third strategic decision they focus on. Deng Xiaoping's Southern tour in 1992.
Right, 1992. And the backdrop here is crucial. Think about the international scene, 1990, 1991.
Hugely dramatic. Eastern Europe changing completely, the Soviet Union collapsing.
Yeah.
And Professor Zhang and Liu described this mood inside China then. Uncertainty, maybe even pessimism. People questioning socialism's future. Calls to resist Western influence, this idea of peaceful evolution.
And worries about foreign investment, too. Right?
Exactly. Anxiety about opening up too much. But amidst all that, Deng, well, he saw opportunity. Remarkable foresight, really.
They quote him, don't they, saying something just months before the Soviet collapse.
Yeah. The great changes in the world are an opportunity. Amazing timing. Speaks volumes about his strategic mind.
Absolutely. So the Southern tour in 92 was about seizing that opportunity.
Precisely. The professors detail the messages he was pushing really urgently during that tour. Stick to socialism, no question. Push reform. And opening up even harder, bigger scale.
Be bolder with the market economy.
Be bolder, yes. And critically, really focus on improving people's living standards, material improvements, and reaffirming that, yes, socialism with Chinese characteristics can work. It can succeed.
He seemed to have a really deep understanding of why the Soviet and Eastern European models failed.
He did. Years of study, visits. He'd seen it firsthand. And the professors say his conclusion was clear. The main failures were economic, stagnant living standards.
And that led to
a loss of faith among the leaders themselves, in their own system.
So Deng's takeaway was
that failing to stick with socialism, but also failing to reform, to open up, to develop the economy, to improve lives, that was a dead end. You had to do both. Urgently.
That makes sense. There was also that interesting point about how Deng approached engagement with the West, with globalization, that forward principle.
Yes. The strategic guidance, often translated as observe calmly, secure our position, cope with affairs calmly, hide our capacities, and bide our time.
Be good at maintaining a low profile and never claim leadership. He mentioned that back in '88 to an African president.
Right. Gives you a real insight into the long game, the strategic patience. China chose to jump into economic globalization, but was much more wary, more selective about the political side, trying to manage the potential downside.
Careful balancing act.
And this period, around the Southern tour, saw some major theoretical shifts, too, especially Deng's statement about planning in the market.
Oh, yeah, that was huge, wasn't it? Planning and the market are both economic means.
Not the essential difference between socialism and capitalism that just cut through decades of ideological gridlock. It paved the way, theoretically, for the socialist market economy.
And those 3 benefits criteria he set up?
Crucial benchmarks. Is it good for developing socialist productive forces? Does it boost China's overall national strength? Does it improve people's lives?
Practical measures?
Very practical. Those became the yardsticks for judging reforms.
Okay, so those are the three big decisions. But then the discussion goes deeper into the sort of the spirit behind it all. Professor Liu talks about the unique Chinese characteristics of socialism.
Right, he really ties it back to China's own civilization, its long history. It's not just imported ideology.
So what are the key aspects he brings up?
Well, first, this idea of seeking truth from facts. He connects that to a traditional Chinese focus on practical experience, but also to Mao Zedong thought. Deng saw it as vital. For fighting wars, yes, but also for building the country, for reform.
Makes sense. What else?
Then there's this philosophical concept, T and Yang, body and application.
Okay.
So socialism is the T, the fundamental body, the core. But how you build it, the methods you use, like the market economy, that's the Yang, the application. He links this to Deng's definition of socialism's essence. Liberate productive forces, eliminate exploitation, achieve common prosperity.
So the method serves the core principle.
Exactly. And then there's adapting to the times. Deng always stressed analyzing the world, the situation now, and being bold, experimenting, crossing the river by feeling the stones.
That famous phrase.
Yeah. Then putting people first. Professor Liu sees a link between Marxist ideas about the masses and the traditional Chinese concept of minben, people as the root, plus the party's own tradition, the mass line. Deng focused on material well-being, but also spiritual civilization. Both matter.
Okay. And the last one.
Harmony and coexistence. Contrasting it with what he sees as the competitive nature of Western capitalism. China emphasizing harmony, peaceful development, win-win cooperation. He mentions Deng's view of China sharing a destiny with the Third World, leading to today's idea of a community of shared future.
So it's a blend of Marxist ideas and deep Chinese traditions.
That's the argument. The civilizational view helps understand the unique path. Then the discussion moves to questions from students.
For the Q&A part, the first one was about what really pushed the reform and opening up forward.
And Professor Zhang talks about that stark contrast in living standards he saw himself, visiting Thailand, Africa.
He mentioned Bangkok being way ahead of Chinese cities back then.
Yeah. And then Deng's attitude, learning from others, like Singapore, sure. But, as Kishore Mahbubani noted, the aim was always to eventually surpass them, not just copy. That ambition was a big driver.
Ambition and also practical strategy, right? Leveraging China's strengths.
Exactly. Leveraging the land, the labor.
Right.
While figuring out how to get the capital and technology they lacked.
And Professor Zhang brought up that Western narrative again.
Right. The idea that socialism just meant poverty. Deng's statement, poverty is not socialism, was revolutionary precisely because it challenged that dominant view head-on.
Okay, then another student asked about socialism with Chinese characteristics versus, pure Marxism.
Yeah, fundamental question. Professor Liu explains it as the sinicization of Marxism, adapting the core ideas to China's reality, not rigid dogma.
He used historical examples?
Yeah, like Lenin adapting Marx for Russia, a weaker link in the chain, or the CCP adapting it for a peasant-based revolution in China. It's about applying the principles creatively to the specific context.
So what is the essence of Marxism in this view?
The pursuit of an ideal society. Comprehensive human progress, free development. Reform and opening up are seen as the means to get there in China's specific situation.
It requires flexible thinking.
Dialectical thinking, yes. Adjusting theory and policy based on practical needs. So, focusing heavily on productive forces early on was seen as building the foundation for common prosperity, which is a bigger focus now that the economy is more developed.
I see. It's dynamic. Then there was the question about foreign investment. How do you use it but stay secure and maintain socialist advantages?
And Professor Zhang shared Deng's explanation to Mugabe, remember. Foreign investment brings wages, tech, management skills, taxes, exports, market access, lots of benefits.
Multiple angles.
And he mentioned the two ends abroad strategy. The coastal opening. Controversial at the time, maybe, but undeniably crucial in making China the world's factory, the biggest trader.
So what's the approach now? Still wide open?
More selective now, Zhang says. Attracting investment in services, for instance, to boost domestic competition and quality. But still maintaining macro control, especially over capital markets. Managing the risks.
So the old two ends abroad model served its purpose for that specific time.
That's the argument. Historically rational for those circumstances. And he makes the point that China modernized rapidly without exporting its problems, unlike some historical powers. He credits the party's leadership and the people's unity for that.
Interesting contrast. Okay, then a big question. Is China's rise the rise of a new kind of civilizational nation, reshaping the world order?
Professor Zhang's answer was a clear yes. He sees China as a civilizational state, and its rise is changing things. He even pointed to the pandemic response as a moment where the Chinese model looked very different, perhaps more effective in some ways, than Western ones.
What strengths did he highlight?
Effective politics, selection-based, not just electoral. A powerful mixed economy state and private working together. And a society that's maybe more cohesive, with strong state-society interaction.
And drawing on both its history and Marxism.
That dual heritage, exactly. Chinese civilization and Marxism-Leninism. And again, stressing the commitment to peaceful development, community of shared future, not exporting problems, deep civilizational values, he argues.
Right. Okay, final question from the students. What's the most valuable spirit for young people today to take from that whole reform and opening up era?
Professor Zhang really emphasized daring to be first, daring to break molds, to experiment.
Not just following orders.
No. He mentioned Mao, Deng, Zhu, and Lai. They all had that independent judgment, never just blindly following anyone.
He shared that story about Pudong.
Yeah, young officials giving up good jobs elsewhere to go be pioneers in developing Pudong. That spirit of courage, embracing change.
A powerful symbol.
And his conclusion, young people are always the main force in China's big leaps forward. The core spirit of reform and opening up, he says, is innovation, constant renewal. Like that ancient saying, renewing themselves day after day.
Keep pushing, keep innovating.
Exactly. And he encouraged discussion, debate, but also confidence. Chinese confidence.
Okay, so wrapping this deep dive up, it really feels like those three decisions by Deng launching reform and opening up, handling 89, the 92 Southern Tour, were just incredibly foundational.
Absolutely. Taking China from, as they say, standing up to becoming prosperous and now striving to be strong. A huge arc.
And that point about youth, it resonates. Professor Zhang's confidence in the current generation to keep building on that legacy.
Yeah, there's a sense that the energy is still there.
So a final thought maybe for you listening in. Thinking about everything we've discussed, Deng's choices, the ideas behind them, what parts really stand out to you? Are there lessons there? Maybe about bold action, adapting pragmatically, focusing on progress that connect with challenges or opportunities you see either personally or in the world?
Definitely something to think about. Let's keep the conversation going.